What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Stefan, and tonight I'm going to be talking about 2Pacalypse now. The influence and impact of the debut album of the greatest lyrical, realist, and unapologetically black rap revolutionaries that we all love. Yes, it's Tupac. So sit back and enjoy yourself on this ride with me as I take you on another journey throughout the video. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment on the video, and subscribe to my channel if you're new. And welcome back to the channel if you're a returning subscriber. Also, don't forget to turn on your notifications for new videos. So here we go. Before I start this video, I want to give a shout out to one of my favorite supporters on Instagram, beautiful black queen / crushes at Chris is Loving Life behind for the inspiration behind the idea and video. Please follow this beautiful, intelligent, and unapologetically black queen on IG, and how amazing black knowledge is mind-blowing and right on point, like this comment she wrote highlighting major points during the making of my tribute video of the 26th anniversary of All Eyes on Me. Make sure you give this beautiful black queen a following and a salute. Thank you, my beautiful black sister. So here we go. On November 12, 1991, the debut album of Tupac called 2Pacalypse Now dropped by Interscope Records and Jive Records. 2Pacalypse Now is Tupac commentary on temporary social issues facing American society, such as racism, police brutality, poverty, black-on-black crime, and teen pregnancy. It featured 3 singles: Brenda's Got a Baby, Trap, and If My Homies Call. After stepping onto the hip-hop scene as a backup dancer for Oakland-based rap group Digital Underground, a 20-year-old Tupac Amari Shakur, known as his stage name Tupac, would debut his first solo album, 2Pacalypse Now, in 1991, arguably his most political and controversial musical feature throughout his all too brief career. This album solidified Tupac's legacy as a revolutionary and brilliant lyricist who was far ahead of his time in his commentary of the trials and tribulations of the black experience in America. Over the course of 13 tracks, which included the 3 singles Brenda Got a Baby, Trapped, and If My Homies Call, Tupac captured the plight of the black individual in a era marked by Reaganomics, the 80s crack epidemic, highlighting the oppression, anger, and reality of a world that unfortunately doesn't feel that much different now in 2022. It paints a sober but yet vivid portrait of the black experience in America against the plight of racial inequality and injustice. 2Pacalypse was a riff of Francis Ford Coppola award-winning war epic starring Marlon Brando, which premiered 12 years prior In an early interview about the album, Tupac explained the concept of the young black male. Everyone's been talking about it, but now it's not important, he said. It's like we just skip over it. It's no longer a fad to be down for the young black male. Everyone wants to go past like the gangster stuff. It just got exploded. It just like back in the days with the movies, everyone did their little gunshots and hand grenades and blew up stuff and move on. Now everyone's doing rap songs with the singing in it, and I'm still down for the young black male. I'm gonna stay until things get better. It's all about addressing the problems we facing in everyday society. He describes such problems as police brutality, employment, sophisticated education, violence, black on black crime, crack addiction, and teen pregnancy. The album opened a young black male centered on urban youth. Trap sees Tupac comparing inner cities to escapable prisons. You know, they got me trapped in this prison of seclusion. Happiness is a living on the street. It's a delusion. Even a smooth criminal one day must be caught, shut up or shot down with the bullet that he bought, he raps. When my homie calls, a homage to kinship among black males feature lyrics like, if you need my assistance, there will be no resistance. I'll be there in an instant. Who am I to judge another brother? Only by his cover. I'll be no different than the other. Naturally, such themes were out controversy. The most clear example stemming from Soulja stories, which tells the take of a young black man who shoots down a police officer in retaliation of his modernized place in society. In April of 1992, Ronald Ray Howard fatally shot a state trooper in Texas after he was pulled over for driving a stolen vehicle. Howard Eternity City's Tupac Soulja stories as his influence to shoot. Howard was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. Later that September, then Vice President Dan Quayle or whatever his name was, asked Interscope Records to pull the album off retail shelves, describing it as an irresponsible corporate act, adding that there should absolutely be no reason for a record like this to be published. It had no place in our society. Interscope never pulled it, while the album was his least commercially successful, it became certified gold. In October 1991, 1 month before the release of 2Pacalypse Now, 2 Oakland Police Department officers stopped and harassed them for jaywalking. The officers allegedly asked for his name. Since it didn't sound American, he answered them, and they still brutalized and assaulted him, scratching his face all over the street. He filed a $10 million lawsuit against the Oakland Police Department, which he won. The case was settled for $43,000. Brenda's Got a Baby is another powerful track, this time telling the true story of a 12-year-old girl who tried to dispose of a baby after she becomes impregnated by a family member. She later becomes a prostitute and then a murder victim. When this song came out, no male rappers at all anywhere were talking about problems that females were having. Number one, Tupac says in the interview. Number two, it talked about child molestation. It also talked about families taking advantage of families. It also talked about the families of poverty. It also talked about how one person's problems can affect a whole community of people. It talked about how the innocent are the ones that get hurt. It talked about drugs, the abuse of drugs, broken families, how she couldn't leave the baby, the bond that a mother has with a baby, and how women needs to be able to make a choice. He wrote the song while filming the feature film Juice after reading a newspaper article about a 12-year-old girl who became pregnant by her cousin and threw the baby into a trash compactor. Trapped is the debut single from Tupac from his debut album. It deals with police brutality. The first verse of Tupac tells the story of Tupac being harassed by the police, even one shooting at him. He then fires back and says he did it because he was tired of constantly being profiled and abused by police officers. Now off to If My Homies Call. Now this great track is chiefly about the bonds of friendship and how friends do find different paths, to say at least. This catches Pac on as his solo career was on the rise after a solo album and stint with Digital Underground. His friend in the group end up differently, living in a dead-end existence, only working a 9-to-5 with no health care, but selling cocaine like nobody else's business. What intriguing about this is that he didn't look on his friend's life as in descent, whether it was deserving or not. The friendship offered here is oddly sweet and real. This song also boosted is his gentle, poetic sense with lines like, "We both had dreams of becoming great, but his deferred and blurred in shape, changed in shape." The phenomenal production of If My Homies Call has properties of timeless, hand-clapping funk with subtle signatures and a funky bass line. His trademark double-track vocals are political, partly affected here. Like, this track uses so many great samples like Fat Mama from Herbie Hancock, I Don't Know Where This World Is Coming To, from the Soul Children featuring Jesse Jackson, where the part he says brothers and sisters, and Around the Way Girl from LL Cool J. While 2Pacalypse now emerges as his cross-media career taking flight, the timing of this release was arguably even more notable with respect to the broader social and cultural context of what was transpiring across America at that time. 8 months earlier, an eyewitness amateur video had captured 4 white LAPD officers savagely beating a African-American motorist named Rodney King to a bloody pulp after a high-speed car chase. And while videos like this became commonplace 31 years later, the emergence of the King video back in March 3rd, 1991, raised the collective nerve of millions of Americans who have not understood or had natively refused to accept the reality and long legacy of racial motive police brutality until they were able to observe it with their own eyes. Nearly 15 months passed before the 4 officers were acquitted of all charges: assault with a deadly weapon and use of excessive force. 2 other officers were significantly found guilty of the lateral charge and sentenced to 2 months in prison by a federal grand jury in 1993. In the acquittal immediately aftermath, the tension-filled keg powder of Los Angeles erupted in 6 days of rioting marked by widespread violence, burning, and looting. With the city of Los Angeles already on edge 13 days later, on March 16th, 1991, Latasha Harlins, who was a 15-year-old black girl who was virtually murdered by a 51-year-old Korean American named Soulja over a bottle of orange juice. Was tried and convicted of voluntary manslaughter, and her death based in part of security film footage. The judge sentenced her to 10 years in state prison, but the sentence was suspended, and the defendant was instead placed on 5 years probation, 400 hours of community service, and a $500 restitution and funeral expenses. The sentence was widely regarded as an extremely light sentence and a failed appeal, contributing to the 1992 LA riots, especially the target of Koreatown, Los Angeles. The incident and reduced sentencing by the court did nothing but raise the existing tension between African Americans and Asian Americans in South Central Los Angeles. Those tensions were later interpreted by some members of the public and actors as being catalysts for the 1992 LA riots. The Los Angeles mayor office that's estimated that 60% of all businesses vandalized during the riots were Korean owned. When Tupac's full-length album came out in 1991, it didn't have the same immediately impact. Didn't instantly throw him in the upper echoes of rap's elite, such as Nas, Jay-Z, or even his biggest rival, Notorious B.I.G. did. But the album certainly set him up for his promises, but sadly short-lived career. Part of its initial problem was, what held it back was radio play, is that it wasn't an album single. The closest thing to it was what ended up being the best known track from 2Pacalypse Now was Brenda Got a Baby, which discusses teen pregnancy in true Pac fashion, sympathetically explaining a situation without condoning it. But it doesn't even have a hook. Most of the other pieces follow suit, more political than song. The album is more political than the rappers significantly releases, showing an intelligent, talented, and angry young man who was desperately wanting to express and reveal the problems in the urban black community, from racism, police brutality, to the nearly impossibility of escaping the ghetto. He paid tributes to artists like KRS-One, NWA, and Public Enemy, who he considered to be provoking discussion and reaction, but he also cleanly carved out an image for himself, articulate and smart, not boastful, and concerned about two problems, both small and both big and small. Although he discusses these less and less as career progresses, he never leaves them behind. Yes, the edges of 2Pacalypse Now can be a bit rough, and yes, the beats aren't always outstanding, and yes, the MC flow can be a little trippy. Even for him, it's still a great look at what Tupac can offer, and a must-have for any fans of him or hip-hop in general. This album still resonates today as a potential of rage, as evident by the continued ascent of hip-hop music throughout the 90s into the new millennium. The criticism didn't inhibit Pac and his peers from continuing to exercise their First Amendment rights. During his lifetime, he starred in 3 movies, which are the hood classes, included the 1992 Juice, where he plays a militant and hunting individual named Roland Bishop. He starred alongside Janet Jackson in the John Singleton 1993 hood classic Poetic Justice, where he plays a young postal clerk and father named Lucky. Also, he played a local neighborhood thug named Birdie in Above the Rim in 1994. Although his mega superstardom was solidified with the latter of his 3 albums, 1995 Me Against the World, 1996 double album All Eyes on Me, and The 7-Day Theory was released after his death under the name Machiavelli. To me, his first 2 albums, 2Pacalypse Now in 91 and 1993, Strictly for My Niggas, to be his most memorable and most powerful. There was something purer about those early recordings, unfailing by the influence and oversight of Suge Knight's infamous empire. Sadly, on September 13th, 1996, the world lost an amazing, multi-talented, young poetic, rap revolutionary, and the greatest voice ever after a drive-by shooting on September 7th in Las Vegas, Nevada left him in a critical condition and fighting for his life. Also, 3 movies was released after his tragic passing. Bullet in 1996, also in 1997, Gridlock and Game Related was released, along with a few more albums included The 7 Day Theory under the name Machiavelli. When I first heard 2Pacalypse now a few years ago, no one, for that matter, could ever envision that its creator would die less than 5 years later at the young age of 25. We also couldn't fathom how high his legend would ascend in such a short but a short time. Regardless how you feel about his complex, controversial, and sometimes contradictory messages involving across his short-lived career, it's damn near impossible to deny that Tupac was and will forever be revered as the most valuable and influential MCs in hip-hop history. Thank you for enjoying this ride with me throughout the video. Please don't forget to like, share, comment on the video, and subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to turn on your notifications for new videos. Stay safe and blessed always. God bless you and good night. I'm out. Peace.